Hello, welcome back and welcome to Season 2 of English Sound Building, the advanced pronunciation podcast where you do the work to build muscle memory and master new sounds. Always remember that successful communication is possible in any one of the thousands of global English accents. This podcast is for those of you who enjoy playing with sound. We're here to have fun. If you'd find it useful to read as you listen, remember that you can find a free script for this podcast on my Patreon page. That's www.patreon.com/EnglishBrickByBrick. The link's in the episode notes. Everything's free on there. Just scroll down on the main page. I'm not going to be recording a regular video bonus this series, but I might do one from time to time. So this week we're continuing from last week. This week looking at the w and v sounds in the middle or at the end of words. I explained how to make the sounds last week, and we practiced them at the beginning of words. And if you haven't checked that episode out yet, please start there before listening to this week's. If you're ready to move on, let's start with some common words with w in the middle of the word. Listen and repeat. Afterwards. Always. Away. Anyway. Between. Forward. Meanwhile. Network. Nowhere. Quality. Quantity. Question. Quick. Quiet. Quite. Railway. Reward. Sequence. Sweep. Swim. Switch. Towards. 20. Worldwide. Well done. We're now going to listen to them again, this time in groups of 4. Repeat them again in groups of 4. Go a little faster. Afterwards, always, away, anyway. Between, forward, meanwhile, network. Nowhere, quality, quantity, question. Quick, quiet, quite, railway. Reward, sequence, sweep, swim. Switch towards 20, worldwide. Fantastic. And in terms of spelling, you may have noticed that all of those were represented either by the letter W or a QU combination. Obviously, there's a K sound in the QU combination again to give the Q sound. But remember that a letter W in the middle of a word doesn't always mean it's pronounced W, like in owner, power, or newspaper. And you may also have noticed that there weren't any words with the letter W at the end, although this is a common spelling pattern. And this is because where we see the letter W at the end of a word, it's typically silent, like in slow or few. But it is worth bearing in mind that that W sound does sometimes come through where there's a letter W at the end of a word in connected speech, where the word is followed by a vowel sound. For example, in the phrase, "Can I have a few of those books?" Hear what happens to few of. Or, "He's a slow old dog." Slow old. In fact, a W sound can even sneak in where there is no written letter W, like in the phrase, "Please go on." Learning these features of connected speech is a great way to unlock higher levels of listening, as well as a fantastic feeling of spoken fluency. And we'll talk about all of this more in future episodes. For now, let's try some sentences with those W words. As usual, I'll read the sentence 3 times. Once slowly for you to grasp the words. I'll then repeat it at a more natural pace. Pause for you to repeat after me. I'll read it one more time, and again, pause one more time for you to repeat after me. Sentence number 1. Quick railway networks. Quick railway networks. Quick railway networks. And networks is an interesting word there as well. You may have noticed that the first time I read it, when I read it quite slowly, when I was reading the words individually, I pronounced that sound. And if I read the word more slowly, I'm more inclined to do that, to read networks. But the faster I read it, the more likely I am to replace that sound with a stop in my throat. So most of the times you've heard me read it, I've read networks instead of networks. Whichever you do is absolutely fine. It's one of those things that's just really interesting to pay attention to, whether you change it as well as you move from slower to faster speech. Sentence 2. We swam quietly forwards towards nowhere. We swam quietly forwards towards nowhere. We swam quietly forwards towards nowhere. And sentence 3. We rewarded 20 quality questions worldwide. We rewarded 20 quality questions worldwide. We rewarded 20 quality questions worldwide. And well done if you managed that one. I found it really, really hard. That combination of the w and r sound is really tricky for me. The more I think about it, the more difficult it gets. As always with those sentences, it would be a fantastic idea to go back to those list of words. See if you can make your own sentences to practice as well. Okay, now let's move on to and look at some common words with a sound in the middle or at the end of the word. There are two things I want you to pay attention to here. The first one, as with a lot of these voice sounds we've looked at, is to make sure that where they come towards the end of a word, that you're not completely devoicing them. You will hear that I partially devoice them because I turn my vocal cords off before I stop making the sound with my teeth and my lips. But just be careful that you're not devoicing completely and ending up with more of a sound. And we will look at that contrast between and in a future episode as well. And the second one is to see if you can spot any words which are similar to vegetable, which we looked at last week, where I noted that my learners often say that as 4 syllables, vegetable, but in fact it would almost always be reduced to 3 syllables at a more natural pace. See if you can spot any other places where the word has fewer syllables than perhaps you might have read it as. Listen and repeat. Above. Advice. Average. Behavior. Convenient. Conversation. Develop. Device. Drive. 11. Environment. Every. Favorite. Give. Government. Have. Involve. Leave. Love. Move. Never. Over. Save. Several. Well done. And average. Every. Favorite. Several were the words which, again, my learners would often read as average, every, favorite, several. And there are places where all speakers might read them with that additional syllable, but as I said, they tend to be reduced to average, every, favorite, several, and that's the pattern that I would encourage you to practice them at. So we'll listen again, we'll repeat again in groups of 4, moving a bit faster. Above advice, average behavior. Convenient conversation, develop device. Drive 11, environment every. Favorite give, government have. Involve, leave, love, move. Never, over, save, several. Well done. And as last week, the good news here is that the V sound is always represented by a letter V. So let's try some sentences with those V words. Sentence number 1, above average behavior. Above average behavior. Above average behavior. Sentence 2, they have several favorite environments. They have several favorite environments. They have several favorite environments. And sentence 3, they developed the advice over several conversations while driving. They developed the advice over several conversations while driving. They developed the advice over several conversations while driving. Fantastic. So there are no minimal pairs with w and v in the middle of words, but it is a challenge to practice some words containing both w and v sounds. And here you'll really see how easily your mouth moves between the two sounds. And you may find, as last week, that sometimes your brain is telling you to do something and your mouth isn't quite following along. See how you find them. Listen and repeat. Everywhere. Giveaway. Heavyweight. Housewives. Overweight. Overwhelmed. Quiver. Reviewer. Swerve. 12. Wave. Whatever. And to finish off, we'll read them again in groups of 4, a little more quickly. Everywhere giveaway, heavyweight housewives. Overweight, overwhelmed, quiver, reviewer. Swerve, 12, wave, whatever. Really well done. As always, as before, see if you can make more sentences with those words. Give yourself some more practice to do. It'd be really interesting to mix the words from last week's episode with the words from this week's episode as well. And as always, don't forget to try out all of those different techniques that we talked about in those bonus episodes and the last episode as season 1. If you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure that you go back and check there. That's the end of this week's workout. As usual, I can feel that I've worked my mouth muscles a bit harder than usual, and I hope you can too. Don't forget to practice as often as possible to build muscle and muscle memory. If you find it easy, speed the podcast up to 1.25 or 1.5 speed. If you need more time, slow it down. If you're new here and you'd like to follow me on social media, come find me on Instagram or Facebook at English Brick by Brick. I'm not very active on there at the moment, but there are loads of old posts you can look back over. And you'll also find me on Patreon at www.patreon.com/EnglishBrickByBrick. Everything is free on there at the moment, but thanks so much to those of you who are supporting me. It makes such a difference. So we'll be back next week looking at 2 vowel sounds. We'll be looking at the difference between U and which I know is something a few of you are interested in. Until then, enjoy sound building, and I'll see you again soon.